A lot of doubters said it couldn't be done by me. Them same suckers are now looking from under me, wondering what I didn't play myself, kid. I respected my fans and made the high bid.
Hello everybody, Dr. Vasquez here, bringing you part 2 of our exam on the human microbiome and dysbiosis. So we just finished question number 5 this morning before I had to stop to eat breakfast, which turned out to be brunch. So let's do 5 more questions on this fascinating topic. So as I've said on the website recently when I reposted some of those videos from the course, I've been studying microbiome. Actually, I can say that I honestly started studying this topic in 1995. 1995 in the world of functional medicine was a very important year because functional medicine in the United States, as most of us know it, that is the Jeff Bland version of functional medicine, that it was actually started in 1994. So if you go back and listen to, let me see if I have it right here. If you go back and listen to Jeff Bland in his conference presentations, it might be in my other smaller desk, he says that they developed the concept of functional medicine in 1994, and that's when I started studying it. But even though I started studying, functional medicine right out of the gate, so to speak, I didn't start intensively studying the microbiome until the next year, which was 1995. And the reason for that is, in 1995, I got really sick. I had, as some of you know, this will be a way to make sense of it all, I suppose. In 1993, December, going into 1994, let me make sure that's correct. Yeah, it is correct. That's when I relocated, and for me that was a really stressful experience. So 1994 was a big transition for me, and it kind of started taking its toll in 1995. So 1995 is when I got sick with kind of like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and perfect timing. I had just moved to Portland, Oregon to be closer to Seattle, Washington, which was close to Gig Harbor, Washington, which was, of course, the fountainhead for functional medicine. And we didn't have anything like this, in Houston, Texas, of course. But in Portland and Seattle, they were getting seminars, every month from nutrition companies and Jeff Bland and functional medicine and all this kind of stuff. So once I figured out that that was kind of the hot spot at that time, that's why I relocated from Houston, Texas, my hometown, to Portland, Oregon, because I also knew by then that I was going to go to Bastyr, which was in Seattle. In fact, in 1996 was the first year they had relocated to the new campus at, I believe it's called St. Edward's Park. So it was a huge new campus and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, all of this was happening around 1995, 96. And that's when I started studying the microbiome because I didn't know exactly what was wrong with my health at that time, again, and starting in 1995. But it turned out to be gastrointestinal dysbiosis. So at that point, the only people who really knew anything about this topic were Jeff Bland. But as most of you know, he tends to talk at a high conceptual level. It's not really a clinical level. So the only people who were talking clinically were Martin Lee, who was the director of the Great Smokies Laboratory, which later became Genova, and Leo Galland more than anybody else. Leo Galland, as some of you know, is a medical doctor, internal medicine doctor, but he was really a pioneer. In fact, I have one of his books behind me. He was really a pioneer in understanding gastrointestinal dysbiosis. In fact, I think he came up with the term leaky gut, which back then, only caught him a lot of hell because they said it doesn't exist. And now, of course, leaky gut's kind of a household term, basically. And not only leaky gut, but leaky brain and leaky mitochondria, which I talked about in my editorial back in 2014. I don't know, maybe I am or maybe I'm not, I don't really know. But I think I'm the one who came up with the idea of leaky mitochondria. The idea actually goes to Garth Nicholson, but I think I came up with that term. Maybe not. I don't really care. I never really thought of it until right now. But anyway, I've been on the topic intensively of dysbiosis for about 30 years. So let's go through another 5 questions. Your patient, and as I did in the first 5 questions, I'll read the question. I'll try to explain the question to you, because as I said in the first video, the first half of this video, let's say, the first thing when you're taking an exam, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what are they asking? You have to be really clear. That sounds redundant, I'm sure, to many of you, but in the world of medical board exam questions and things like that, you have to assume that they're going to throw in some distractors. And when you're going at a really high pace, at a high level, you've got to have a strategy. As I've said before in other contexts, you have to have a strategy for gaining clarity. And the least you can do is ask yourself, to be clear on what the question's asking. Otherwise, you can easily get distracted by, components of the question stem, which are called distractors, and that's why they're called distractors. It's the attempt is to kind of throw you a red herring. So here we go. And like I said before, if I disagree with my own question, then I'll tell you. I'm looking at this several years later. Maybe I have a different perspective. Your patient has a persistent inflammatory metabolic disease. Well, hey, that didn't tell you anything. The microbial stool analysis did not show evidence of inflammation or dysbiotic colonization. And you suspect the presence of a non-culturable microbe. So that's obviously the question. And here's the answer. Segmented filamentous bacteria have been found in the gastrointestinal tract of humans and are specifically, and most importantly, noted to increase which of the following. Okay, so this is probably going to end up being pretty easy. The question's basically asking you, well, it's not even asking you, it's basically telling you. You've got segmented filamentous bacteria. Those are non-culturable, and they cause inflammatory disease. So I basically already gave you the answer. So this is just a mechanism question. This is just a mechanism question. So segmented filamentous bacteria are non-culturable. They cause inflammatory disease. So all you have to do is pick the mechanism. And so I guess here you would actually have to know something. What is the mechanism through which those bacteria function? I hope that it's not superantigens or bacterial DNA. It's definitely not butyrate because that's anti-inflammatory. P. cresol, like I said before, is associated with autism. It's not a persistent inflammatory metabolic disease per se. It certainly isn't T regulatory cells because that would be anti-inflammatory, and it's not. It could be B cells, but it's not B cells. If we were talking about, IgA nephropathy or vasculitis, then yeah, B cells would probably be a good answer. But we're not talking about that. We're in the category of inflammation going down the road specific to segmented filamentous bacteria. So I think the correct answer here is Th17 cells. So I'm going to highlight that in purple. The only other answer that even has a chance of being correct, and probably by now is correct, I would presume reasonably that segmented filamentous bacteria also produce superantigens. That's not that complicated. A lot of bacteria and viruses produce superantigens. So have they found by now? So, like I said, I wrote this 6 years ago or so. Longer, actually. By now, have some group of researchers somewhere in the world found that segmented filamentous bacteria produce a superantigen? Yeah, probably. But at the time and in the context that I wrote this and emphasized this particular answer, the answer I was probably looking for was Th17 cells. Once those Th17 cells get activated, then you've got all type of autoimmune hell going on. And so that's almost certainly the correct answer. Number 7, your patient wants to be informed of options to hypoglycemic drugs for the treatment of diabetes. The antidiabetic effect of metformin is most similar in terms of clinical effectiveness. And here's another giveaway. Remember what I said earlier. I try to write hard questions, but a lot of, if I try to write a hard question and I put in a bit more context, then sometimes I end up giving away the answer. And let's see if that happened here. Maybe not. Or at least, maybe to me it's obvious, because obviously I'm the one who wrote the material and I wrote the questions. But this is a pretty easy one. Which of the following is a treatment for diabetes and has an anti-diabetic effect similar to metformin? Specifically, so the clinical effectiveness component is a little bit redundant, but impact on the microbiome is very specific. So which one would it be here? I suspect, very reasonably, especially by now, I suspect very reasonably that you could literally by now probably choose any of these options. At the time I wrote this, the only clear and still the best answer is berberine. Change my highlighter here. So here's the best answer. Berberine is the best answer because berberine at 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams. Let me just check the list here before I say what I want to say. Berberine at 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams is unquestionably, at least last time I looked at this research, unquestionably the best answer here. Oregano is antimicrobial, but at least when I wrote this, it had never been shown to be specific or even effective in diabetes. Artemisinin, sure, is an antimicrobial as well, works in the gut, works systemically as well. That's why it's used as a treatment for malaria. But I'm not aware of any studies showing that it's effective in diabetes. Maybe by now it is. But berberine has high-level evidence published in high-level journals with really good preclinical and then clinical data. So, like I said before, berberine is definitely the best option. Rifaximin probably works as well, just by reducing the small intestine bacterial overgrowth that's commonly seen with obesity and diabetes. Vitamin D by now would be another good option. Does it provide an anti-diabetic effect? Yeah, but it depends on the study that you're looking for. So, again, what I asked here is I'm asking for what is the best treatment, not for something that might work or according to a few studies or might theoretically work in this way. Vitamin D is a reasonable answer, but berberine is the best answer. So let's go with that. 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams per day. I think most of the studies were up to 3 months of duration. So certainly for 3 months you could do it and certainly be evidence-based, even if you're practicing in a medical hellhole like I did, which was Houston, Texas, or the state of Texas. Number 8, microbe-induced disorders can be treated with a variety of strategies, including antimicrobial therapy, of course. Eradication, here we go back to Staphylococcus aureus. This is the third question on Staphylococcus aureus. Eradication of Staphylococcus aureus in the nares is most affordably, safely, and effectively accomplished by which of the following? The answer to this question is very obvious as well. Bactrim is the first answer, and yeah, that's an effective treatment. It's an antibiotic. But is it the most affordable? No. Is it the safest? No, because Bactrim is, I think antibiotics are great. I love them. I'm not anti-antibiotic like a lot of people are in the functional medicine world. I think antibiotics are wonderful. And I think this antibiotic is wonderful as well. I've used it many times myself. I've used it. I grew up on Bactrim because I had acne as a kid. Back in the day, that was the treatment for acne, was giving people antibiotics. So literally, I spent my teen years on Bactrim. But is it the most affordable? No. Is it the safest? Hell no. Bactrim now has been associated with many cases of Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is potentially fatal. So that takes it out of the safe category. Is it effective? Yeah, it works. But it's kind of overkill. Again, if you're a good test taker, you have to go back to what is the question asking. We're talking about eradication of Staphylococcus aureus in the nose, in the nares. Did I say the sinus cavity? No. If I had said the sinus cavity, then yeah, systemic antibiotic. Or if I had said, some other location. But specifically in the nares, we're just talking right here at the nose. So do you need to use a systemic antibiotic for that? Obviously not. So that's for several reasons, trimethoprim is the wrong answer. Cephalexin is another antibiotic. It's wonderful, but is it the safest, most affordable, and most effective here? Definitely not the safest and definitely not the most affordable, so it's off the list. Povidone iodine is the correct answer here. Mupirocin can be used as a topical antibiotic, like a topical cream that's put in the nose. Is it reasonably safe? Yeah, it's reasonably safe. Is it the safest? No. Is it more expensive than povidone iodine? Of course it is. And is it the most effective option here? No. Povidone iodine does not and probably will never associate with antibiotic resistance. So again, povidone iodine is more affordable, more easy to access. Anybody can buy it in the grocery store or pharmacy. So it continues to be the best choice. Metronidazole, hell no. Metronidazole isn't even specific for Staphylococcus aureus. So we tend to, metronidazole is a good drug. I just had my wife taking a course of tinidazole last week, which is kind of the nicer cousin of metronidazole. Sorry, I skipped vancomycin. Vancomycin's a nice drug too. But metronidazole is mostly for so-called, like parasites and amoebas and giardia and STDs. But it's mostly for gram-negative bacteria. Staphylococcus aureus is gram-positive. Vancomycin, which I skipped over, is one of my favorite drugs. But it's not going to do anything at all for Staphylococcus aureus in the nares. So that's a completely wrong answer. So again, the correct answer here, without any debate, is povidone iodine. So that would be our correct answer. I actually use that on a reasonably regular basis, maybe about every 10 days or so. I'm not on anybody's schedule by any means, but every once in a while I'll use povidone iodine, and exactly for this reason. Basically, just about everybody carries Staphylococcus aureus in their nose, in their nares, and so the skin on the inside of the nose is stratified squamous epithelium. So it's pretty tough, and you don't get a lot of tissue irritation. So basically what I do is, we're going to have to pretend here a little bit, but let's pretend that this is a bottle of 10% or even 8% povidone iodine. The way that I do it, and the most reasonable way to do it at home, is you just stick a cotton swab into the iodine, and then you get the tip of it soaked in iodine, and then just swab on the inside of your nose right here at the front. You can try to go back a little farther, but it's going to get uncomfortable, and if you go too far back, then it's going to start to burn, because you will have then contacted the mucosa after you pass the stratified squamous epithelium. And so obviously that's going to be a lot more tender. So, but right here in the nares, I use 10%. I think that the product from 3M is 5%. So if I use 8% or 10%, I'm still higher than the FDA approved version of povidone iodine for the nares. And that's fine with me. So again, you've got your iodine, you stick in a cotton swab, and you do circles in your nose and right here at the tip and all this kind of stuff, and call it good. Then what I do, then you've got like your cotton swab that you just ran through your nose, and it's kind of gross. It's kind of mucusy. So I take a piece of tissue paper, and then cover the gross end, and then we've got the clean end, and then I repeat the process for the other side, because you don't want to contaminate with all that mucus and nasty stuff. It probably doesn't do anything, but it's just kind of nasty. And then you can do the other side. So that's what I do. I'm not giving you medical advice, but I'm just telling you what I do. That's been shown, that process of putting povidone iodine in the nares has been shown to be effective for reducing post-surgical infections. Orthopedic surgery and open heart surgery is where I've seen it used the most. I think mostly orthopedic. But it's a good treatment to give yourself before if you have to have surgery. You might think about it then. And what else? Oh, just general house cleaning, so to speak. Reducing that reservoir of Staphylococcus aureus that a lot of people carry around in their nose, and then people touch their nose, and then they touch the rest of them, and contaminating back and forth, contaminating from their body to their nose and their nose to the body. I talked about that before in the other video. So, yeah, it's a reasonable thing to do. I do it. I've never had a problem with it. I never had any irritation from it. One time, a long time ago, so this was back when I was living in Seattle, which is when I probably first heard about doing some of these things. I remember, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I ended up putting like a 10% povidone iodine a little too deep into my sinuses, and that burned like fire. So again, we all have kind of a physiologic limit to how far we can go with 10%. Maybe 5%'s easier, but anyway, 5% is hard to get. I mean, you can dilute a store-bought brand. They're typically at 10%. I mean, you could dilute it if you want, but I just use 10%. I've never had a problem. That's what works for me. I'm not telling you what to do, but that's how I do it. 2 more questions. The ability to achieve sustained remission in rheumatoid arthritis is impressively almost impossible with the use of current immunosuppressive and anti-inflammatory drugs. In the treatment of the orodental dysbiotic component of rheumatoid arthritis, the most important initial component of the treatment plan for reducing pain and inflammation is scaling and planing. That's reasonable. Improving orodental health has been shown to reduce pain and inflammation in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. This is a long question, Tim. While some of the benefit is via non-specific reductions in gingival permeability and bacterial inflammagen load or absorption, the specific goal is to eradicate Porphyromonas gingivalis because of its production of which of the following? Wow, that was a long stem. So what's the question asking? We are talking about rheumatoid arthritis. We're talking about Porphyromonas gingivalis. And we're talking about the mechanism. So that's basically what the question's asking. That's a long stem, but we got there. So what's the mechanism? Specific goal is to eradicate that particular microbe tightly associated with rheumatoid arthritis because that microbe produces what? That's the question. So let's just skip around a little bit. Beta-glucuronidase is completely irrelevant to this conversation, and it's produced more in the gut. And non-specific reductions, specific goal. So I do say specific goal here. So that means some of the okay answers aren't going to be good enough. I'm talking about what specifically is going on here between rheumatoid arthritis, specifically this bacteria, Porphyromonas I haven't seen this. I haven't said this in a long time, as you can tell. Porphyromonas. Yeah. So again, the question is specifically asking about rheumatoid arthritis, specifically with this particular microbe producing what to associate it with rheumatoid arthritis. So again, the answer is not beta-glucuronidase. That's completely irrelevant to this conversation. It's not protease. Whoops, sorry. It's not a protease. Acid phosphatase is produced by Staphylococcus aureus associating with Wegener's granulomatosis. So that's a good answer for a different question, but it's not the answer to this question. Peptidase is not correct. Transglutaminase is definitely not correct. So the correct answer is, that leaves us with option A, peptidyl arginine deaminase. So basically that's the enzyme that adds an arginine or modifies an arginine in many different human proteins, and that's the association between that bacteria and rheumatoid arthritis. Of all the bacteria names, this has been the one that I've screwed up the most. So let's go through it. Porphyromonas gingivalis. Porphyromonas gingivalis. They could have come up with something easier, you'd think, but apparently not. Porphyromonas gingivalis. Yeah, so again, it produces an enzyme that modifies an arginine residue on other proteins in the body. And then that becomes an antigen, and that triggers an immune response. And that is tightly associated with, causatively associated with rheumatoid arthritis. So that's the best and only answer for that question. Number 10, this is the last question, obviously. Microbial molecules are capable of inducing a wide range of human physiologic disruption. Which of the following microbial molecules is noteworthy for its abilities to, this is easy. Yeah. Which of the following microbial molecules is noteworthy for its ability to, 1, promote systemic inflammation, increase intestinal permeability, impair cytochrome P450, detoxification enzymes, impair mitochondrial function and ATP production, and finally promote pain sensitization via peripheral and central mechanisms? So the answer to this question is pretty obvious to me. Lipoteichoic acid is not correct. I believe that comes from gram-positive bacteria. But it doesn't do all of these things in the same way that lipopolysaccharide does. So this is the correct answer. Acetate isn't anywhere near the correct answer, so that's very, oops, I don't know why that happened. So that's very wrong. Peptidoglycan, I think of that as mostly being from gram-positives, and bacterial capsule likewise is not correct. Some of those actually come from gram-positive and gram-negative. But the correct answer here is very clearly lipopolysaccharide from gram-negative bacteria. It is the most inflammatory molecule, or at least used to be the most inflammatory molecule. Now it's probably, I don't know, maybe it still is. But it has been described as the most pro-inflammatory molecule that exists. So that takes care of number 1. Increases intestinal permeability, yes, probably via cytokines. For the same reason that it impairs mitochondria. I'll get to that in just a moment. And same thing for number 3. Impairs cytochrome P450 enzymes. That apparently occurs through an inflammatory mechanism, probably tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is probably, number 4, the mechanism by which endotoxin impairs mitochondrial function. I don't think it's a direct effect, because I don't think that the endotoxin would have to pass through the cell membrane and then pass into the mitochondria. I don't think that happens. But what does happen is that LPS triggers inflammation. One of those inflammatory cytokines is tumor necrosis factor alpha, and that basically turns off protein production. So that's why you get increased intestinal permeability, impaired cytochrome P450, and impaired mitochondrial function, because it basically turns off the electron transport chain. And then in the brain, the microglia get triggered by LPS, and that's what triggers neuroinflammation. So again, LPS, definitely the best answer. Man, I just got really parched. So those are the questions and the answers. So again, anytime you're taking like a high stakes exam, you just have to chill out, focus in. First question you have to ask yourself, or what are the details? If they're giving me details, you have to incorporate those details. But the first question you have to really focus in on is, what is the question here? And then, through process of elimination, what I tried to do anytime I took a big exam, and they're all big exams, you have to pass all of them. But I tried to pick which is the correct answer and also eliminate what are the incorrect answers. And that's how I knew that I was going to get the answer right. In this case, I've got set up to 7 different options. But on medical exams like the U.S. Medical Licensing Exam, USMLE, I think we had questions with 13 options for sure. I'm quite sure about that because I remember it. And so then you only have, more or less 72 seconds, as I recall. I don't recall right now if 72 seconds was the average time per question, or if that's what we started with. But somehow I've got 72 seconds in my mind. But you know, when you've got a complex question stem, and then you've got 13 options that you have to eliminate, those 72 seconds go by pretty quickly. So anyway, that's how I do it. Focus in on what the question is, what are the details, what are the distractors, what are the definers. You know, if the question says, you know, what's the best treatment for this for somebody who doesn't have any money, the answer is not going to be rifaximin, because it used to cost $700. Depends on which country you're in. In the United States, it used to cost hundreds of dollars. In other countries, it's like $20. But obviously, you know, that's something that you have to consider, is what's the social context. And that's one of the four pillars of evidence-based medicine, is, you know, social and economic context. So anyway, I think I've said enough about this. Focus in on what the question is, details, distractions, and then choose the best answer and eliminate the bad ones, and then you know you've got the answer correct. So, hope you're all doing well. I'll get this on the website as soon as I can. And remember, if you ever want to mispronounce a word, this is the best word I've ever found that I consistently mispronounce. Porphyromonas gingivalis. The gingivalis part's easy, but Porphyromonas, man, I don't know why they had to make it so difficult. Okay, take care. Hope you're all doing well. Bye.
I'm an old soul, got a funky sound. Gonna sing a song, turn the world around. I whoop that ass, you know I got the moves. Spank that ass, I'm gonna make you move. I ain't no player, I'm just here to shake. Hump that ass, no time for heartbreak. I'm the one who brings the rhythm to the night. I keep you